Here we go. One wait. I have everybody on this side. It's not balanced. We all need to space out.
Good evening, everyone. We are back with item number 4A, coming from the May 6, 25 meeting for facility allocation policy. A presentation from Forward Creative, Mary Ellen McLuff, and she is joining us virtually. Welcome, Mary Ellen. And
Thank you. Good evening.
This evening, we do have some representatives from the community, and they will listen respectfully with council, and we will hear what you have found. So thanks very much. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be at this point now in the recreation allocation policy process. As folks in the room know, I'm sure in the audience as well as around in council. This has been a process of deep community engagement, and are very pleased to be putting forward now what we believe is a policy that represents the voice of community. I wanted to bring it forward in committee of the whole, where it's just a bit of a less formal setting, because at this point we're not looking for a formal approval from council. We're more so here to have council review it and give us any feedback at this point. If there's anything that's, you know, raising a red flag, or if everything is looking good and you feel confident, that's sort of what we want to hear today. As mentioned during the allocation policy development, we did a significant amount of community engagement, and we hope that when residents and council and staff read this, they see themselves and their voice represented within it. It's not to say that everybody will pick up the policy and feel they necessarily have everything that they would like, but it does mean that they should see their voice represented. They should see what they've asked for in some way, in some element on that paper. It's also important to mention that we've built this off of the foundation of what the current utilization is. And so that means that there shouldn't be major dramatic shifts come the rollout. It should be more so maybe some minor changes in schedule here and there, as folks may potentially request the exact same time slot as another. When that does happen, that's when the decision tree comes into effect, and that should help staff determine which group competing for that space would be the one that should be selected. We're here to review the policy today with council in particular, and hear if there's any feedback. I also want to recognize it was a team effort on our firm's end as well. Although I've come and done many presentations, there are many other faces that have been involved in the development of this. So I aim to be able to answer everybody's questions, but should there be any that I can't answer on the spot, I'm also happy to take it back to the team and come back with an answer. And lastly, before I pass it over to the floor for questions or comments on the policy itself, I want to mention that we've added into the policy a review committee that will continuously reassess the policy on an annual basis. And the purpose for this being that we really saw great community input on this policy, and it's something that community wants a voice within. So we wanted to embed that right into the policy itself. And the benefit of that is that as the community grows, as the community evolves, so can the policy, so that the community is continuously represented within it. I'm not going to read through the whole policy together. I'm going to assume that most folks have read it from their package, but I would like to open the floor and see at the outset if there are any questions or feedback or points of discussion from council or community, or maybe community is not supposed to speak, I don't know, from council in particular.
Thank you. So council, is there anyone that has any specific questions regarding the presentation that you received in your package? And this is for information for council. This is for us to have an opportunity to speak to Mary Ellen if you have any concerns. So we will go to Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for the information and the draft. I guess one thing that I saw, and to your point, I did hear some of the stuff that I've said. I can see some of the stuff that some of the community groups that I know have asked for as well, for youth and things like that. And I'm very happy that it's going to be looked at every year. There's one thing that I think it may be missing, and I just say may be missing, is we talk about groups and seniors and everything else, but I also think that since the Quispamsis taxpayer is the one there, I know we've got groups that says at least if you're 60%, and I think at least I think majority I know the people that are here, we're at that. So I think we're at 60 something, so we're good. But maybe, for example, when you say a seniors group comes in, I'll just use that as a blanket thing, is if it's, you still have to have that same kind of designation. Like the Quispamsis residents should be first, and maybe that 60% is through all of the groups, but just when I read, it said groups, it said 60%, but then it said senior members and things like that. Like that Quispamsis designation should be there first. And the reason I say that, and I'll get some flack from different people, but you look at the Qplex between our operating deficit, how much we pay for our principal and interest, it's about $2.5 million a year, right? When you put it all in, that's all paid by the Quispamsis taxpayer, right? A regular rink, and to say that, the Qplex is more than a rink. It's the walking track. It's got people in there. It's got the pool. It's got everything else. So it's just not a rink facility. But, and also maybe we got to look at things, and I'm just thinking of, the future. A rink costs a lot of money, but, a lot of them are going 24/7 or 12 months a year. We've got one that does it. The other one doesn't. I'm not saying we go 12 months a year, but is it open in earlier in October? Does it, little things like that you can facilitate, because as we keep growing, and it's just not hockey that's growing, a lot of things are growing, is where do we decide when we build a new one? And when we build a new one, if we're doing it as a joint community, how do we pressure our existing sister communities to do the same? Because if we just build more and nobody else does, everybody's happy, but the Quispamsis taxpayer gets the largest of the costs. So I was just thinking somewhere that the Quispamsis resident should be in there, maybe a bit more defined in some of the other groups, and maybe it was inferred that they all have the 60%, but I wasn't sure by reading it, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. I appreciate this. I think an interesting point that you might be interested in too, as well, as that in the discovery, when we were meeting with community, and also reviewing the policy as we developed it as well, this was something that we thought about, and in particular looking at the deficit of the Qplex as one of the particular deficits that is a larger one for the town. We know that recreation typically does run at a deficit, so I don't think that we're aiming to get to a break-even point, which is not what you said, I realize as well. But just to clarify for other folks as well, that our objective is to not necessarily get it to a breaking point, but be as realistic with what we can in terms of cost recovery. And in addition to that, looking, as you said, at ensuring residents have access if they're the ones that are footing that bill. Part of what we spoke with staff about as a next phase that the town may be interested in doing is really looking at the revenue strategy for the facilities, as well as the cost recovery approaches to pricing. When we went through the potential pricing for the facilities, one thing that we explored was a rate that's different for folks that are outside of Quispamsis versus a resident rate, and likewise a for-profit rate versus a nonprofit rate, and that kind of helping to balance the overall costs of the facility and ideally offset some of those to the other users, such as non-residents that are still using those facilities. And at the same time, if we look at other forms of revenue like sponsorship, there's still a lot of opportunity that the Recreation Department could be, or the Community Services Department could be exploring. And so one thing that we have proposed as a further phase to this is to really dive into the revenue piece in particular, and have some resources allocated to that, as I believe it will probably help with some of the points that you've made with regards to the deficit, but then also looking at is it residents that should be footing the full bill in the first place if other community members are using the facilities? And how can we build in a model that allows for other forms of revenue to come in that considers that? So I know that's not a direct answer to the residents piece, but I think that may address some of the thoughts that you had there, and they were on our mind as well.
Thank you. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a few specific questions or feedback in regards to the policy. So on page 5.3, it was in regards to just timing of the returning user reallocation. And really just my question or my thought, based on even some of the recent feedback that we've received, is it looks like, they're going to be looking at the seasonal calendars and working with the sports groups. And I guess I was just wondering if that would give us enough time, because it sounds like right now there are some hiccups in terms of what's happening, in terms of getting things kind of signed and organized so that the seasons can start. So anyway, I just wanted to make a comment about that. And maybe what I'll tell you the few things that I have, and then maybe you can kind of address them all at once. Another one is on page 8 in regards to allocation cap per group. And I guess I'm wondering in regards to that, and I know that the plan is to phase that down, and I'm not sure how that will work. And again, so I'd like some clarity on that in regards to a group, let's say, that has 800 members versus 100 members. And, again, if we're kind of dealing with them as groups, again, a group of 50 or 100 members is going to definitely have less utilization. But if we're kind of considering them one group, I'm wondering how that's going to actually work out in the wash when we're dealing with a very large group versus a small group and you're still using like the 50% kind of mark. On page 9, in regards to tournaments, it looks like it's going to be capped at 2 tournaments per season. And again, there's some groups that there's a lot of kids or individuals in that organization as compared to maybe a smaller one. So 2 might seem like a lot for one group, and it might seem like not enough for other groups. So again, the last thing we want is for groups to start kind of spreading, like dividing out and doing, different groups just to kind of manage the policy. So I wanted to mention that. On page 11, it talks about equity and inclusion. And I guess my question is just how do you plan on kind of accomplishing it? It sounds like underserved populations are going to be considered, but it doesn't really say how that's going to be accomplished. So it sounds good, but I'm wondering the how. On page 15, on 11.3, it talks about, so I'm really happy to see that there's going to be community involvement in terms of an allocation review committee. And I just want to know how that committee is going to be picked and if that will be part of the policy. And then my last comment, it kind of builds off of what Councillor Miller had asked in regards to Quispamsis residents. And, our reality is that, even just driving up a street, it's very hard to even differentiate sometimes if we're in Quispam or Rossay. So, we're all one big happy family in KV. But the reality is, because of that, sometimes it's more of a KV facility versus a Quispamsis facility. And I'm just wondering in terms of, I guess, looking at working closely with Rossay, because our reality is, it's really hard to kind of weed through who's Quispam, who's Rossay, because really it's KV. But we really should be almost looking at this from a KV lens, because that's the reality versus Quispam versus Rossay. Because, most of our sports organizations aren't developed by town, they're developed by the KV. So I just wanted to, I guess, get your thoughts on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. I'm gonna flip back, and if I miss any, just let me know. I'm gonna go through kind of one by one. I made notes as you were speaking. In terms of the returning user allocation and whether the period is long enough, we are working closely with staff on this policy, and so to date they haven't necessarily flagged that as an issue, but I will say that we've included it to be at least 4 to 6 weeks notice. So it would be fully within staff prerogative to say, we're going to give a month's notice, we're going to do this 6 or 2 months in advance. At the same time, it's something that's worth bringing back to them. So I will flag it with them and confirm that that 4 to 6 weeks notice is enough time on their end. And then at the same time, you know, thinking about that for community, if it allows them a good amount of time. It is a relatively standard window that we see across allocation policies, but that doesn't mean that it's the right fit for every community. And so what I think I'll do is I'll take that back to staff, that comment, and just make sure and confirm how they feel about the window in particular, as they'll have the most on the ground experience in that regard with the groups themselves and how much time that often takes them. I'm gonna flip forward here. Your next one was on the allocation cap and how this would work. So our objective was to phase it in, as you saw. And so, you know, ideally what we're seeing is currently in the schedule, there are only, you know, a couple groups that may hit that current cap or be close to that current cap. And so it's not a piece that we're seeing is affecting a large number of groups, or that there is, you know, a particularly small group that's having a huge amount of ice time. And so for that particular reason, we suggested the cap as sort of a blanket cap, knowing that, you know, if a group is utilizing more than 50% of that ice time, they most likely are a group that has a decent amount of folks within it. That being said, there are clauses within the policy that go towards community benefit as well. So if it was the case that we saw, you know, a small group of 10 people that were kind of coming in to use a significant amount of ice time, and that didn't quite work with what the community needed at the time, there are ways that we can kind of look within the policy and say, okay, does it make sense for this group to have that cap, or do we need to make some adjustments? That being said, I do think it's an important flag to bring back to our team as well, in terms of you know, the percentage caps and looking at how does that work when we have, you know, a small group of residents versus a large group of residents, so almost on a per capita base. So what I'll do is I'll take that piece back to our team in particular and look at how we maybe consider building in the size of the group, because I think it is a valid point that we want to make sure that we're not seeing, you know, a significant portion of ice time going to a very small number of people. And so I appreciate that comment, and we'll bring it back. Likewise on the tournaments, so we heard that an average of 2 tournaments would have been, you know, a good starting number for folks. Now, that being said, what I would say would be that could be a piece that we continuously seek feedback on, as well as the committee, in terms of, you know, is 2 tournaments enough? I'm also curious to hear the rest of council if they feel that number is enough. And you know, it's interesting because in year 1 we set a certain number, but that doesn't mean that it's the right number. And that's the purpose of that annual committee, to say, okay, are we seeing a large number of groups that want to have more tournaments? And so at this point, what we're trying to decide is what is the effective number for year 1. And 2 seemed to be a place where we weren't displacing a significant number of tournaments that were already happening. Now, that being said, as I said, I'm kind of curious to hear around the rest of the table if they have any thoughts on that as well. I think it's an interesting point that you flagged. In terms of the equity lens, that's a really great question. So if you look on page page 6. So when we have tiered requests, so essentially if all groups are considered equal in going down the decision tree, by step 7, that's when the equity lens would come in. So that's when we say, okay, we need to provide greater consideration to the group that has that promotes greater access, affordability, cultural inclusion, or gender equity. So we do have that baked in right to the decision tree process, particularly around when there's 2 pieces of space or time or ice or court that are being requested at the same period of time. So tangibly, that's where you see it in the decision tree. And at the same time, we've included it as a guiding principle for staff to consider when they are, going through the process of allocating time. Sure. I believe the last question I have, or no, there's two more. How will they be picked? We haven't specified how they will be picked within the policy. And so I think that's also an important point that we'll bring back to the team. But I think that, when it comes time to pick, community is going to want to be involved in that process, I suspect. And at the same time, we don't want to create an election for the committee. So what we'll do is we'll come back to you with some proposed concepts for that. So I appreciate that comment as well. On the point of the KV lens, that's an interesting one, and it's not one that we heard in the process to date. I can see what you mean, and remember on the drive specifically when we drove through from Quispamsis to Rothsay, and it was like, oh, now we're in Rothsay, but you can't really feel much of a difference. It's that invisible line that marks it. So it's not to say that the policy is only based for Quispamsis residents. What we actually did was when we were looking at the data, we saw what is the typical makeup of a group. And that's how we landed on the 60% Quispamsis residents. So when we look at residency of a group, we actually do consider that there's a significant portion, almost half, that may not be an actual Quispamsis resident. And that's kind of how we baseline our residency. So I wouldn't say that they're not, the lens isn't there, but what I would say would be it's a Quispamsis resident priority with the understanding that there are other residents that typically do use the space, which is important in many regards, whether it's a sports team that, you need enough kids to play a game, or whether it's residents that support the overall revenue of the facility too. It's a Quispamsis policy, but it's an inclusive space. And so the policy does allow for that utilization from other areas. I hope that answers all of your questions. But if there are any follow-ups, just let me know.
Thank you very much, Mary Ellen and Councillor Luck. And also, certainly we can send questions off to our Director of Community Services as well. And that way, when you are comparing again with Ms. Burton-Dixon, those questions will reach you as well, whether or not they come from any of the organizations that use the amenities here in Quispamsis. And I'm glad that you are clarifying that last note, because I think it is important to identify that there is a difference in the boundaries between Rothsay and Quispamsis. We are two unique towns. We are recognized by by our maps and our boundaries that we are two unique towns. And as Councillor Miller said, it's the taxpayers of Quispamsis that pay for all of our amenities, doesn't matter what they are. And that we want to ensure that the residents of Quispamsis have an opportunity to use whatever amenities we avail to them through their tax dollars. So I'll go now to Deputy Mayor Squire.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just a couple of questions. I noted, and a couple of comments. I noted that you have senior as age 65. So I sort of question that, where the 65 came from. I guess if you use in CPP, it could be age 60 plus. And that our demographics actually show the largest portion of our population is age 55 plus. But it came through loud and clear in all the consultations that everybody, regardless of age, were dead center on the youth. And that's where we wanted to put the majority of our efforts are on the youth, according to the data you collected, if I'm correct. So that age 65, I just wonder about that because of we have so many people age 55 plus. I would like to see that looked at again. I really concern when I hear about the number of residents from Quispamsis in an organized sports. I tend to shy away from that. I remember the day when there was no KV pickleball or no KV basketball or no KV hockey. They were individual towns. And I clapped the day that mergers happened so that all children or all youth got to play because there was a real rivalry between the towns. So I shy away a bit when I hear that, you know, how many people are from Quispam. I was very proud that during COVID, our director of community services, we made sure the rink was open so that all people could walk the track. We have data that supports the, Ms. Dana Dixon has the data that supports the number of people and where they came from to use our track. So I see health as the overall outcome of this. And I don't want to get in the weeds about they get this and they get that. I want to, this whole asset or the facility allocation to me is making sure that people have access to getting a good, healthy lifestyle, regardless of what that looks like for you, whether it's walking the track, whether it's KV quilting, whether it's doing line dancing, whether it's pickleball, whatever your choice is. And you change as you age, your choice of recreation, or if it's walking the trails, it changes as we age. So I just want us to be really careful about what we're saying when we're talking about separating Quispamsis. And just a wild idea, it could be wild, but when it comes to equity, I would like to see perhaps maybe that we have something. Now, we're talking, we're brainstorming, right? Everybody gets the brainstorm on organizations maybe getting a real handle on people that don't have as much, that aren't as fortunate. I know we have organizations like Pro Kids, they may pay for the equipment, but that doesn't mean a child can get to the rink. That doesn't mean that a mother of 3 can put all 3 kids in the car and try to get one to the rink, and the other ones, the other 2 are sick at home. So I'm just thinking, and that's regardless of age. It could be a senior in need of transportation, or I would like to see a challenge put out there or something maybe within the policy. If we're going to talk about equity, well, how do we accomplish that, as Councillor Luck has alluded to? Do we put it in writing? Do we say, if you're a user of one of our facilities, perhaps this would be one of your obligations, is to, we give and take here, make sure that that child gets to the rink, or make sure that that child gets to go to swimming lessons or whatever it is at the time. So, and of course with equity, I can't talk about equity without talking about gender-based equity. And I know that we, our female athletes, we know that at the age of 13, that's the age that young girls usually start to drop away from sports. So where is it that at that age point, that can we look at equity somehow to do with that age, and how to encourage more young women to stay involved in physical activity? So those are just some of my thoughts. Take them for what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to share information to everybody on the history of the Quispamsis Old Timers Hockey League. I started that league the year that we opened the QMA 43 years ago. When we started out, we had 4 teams of 16 players. When we moved to the Qplex in 2011, we expanded to 6 teams of 16 players, so we've got 96 hockey players now. We've got 2 coaches, 1 statistician. This year, we're budgeted to pay the referees $11,000. The teams play 46 games per year. We're paying ICE this year of $40,307. The 96 players and coaches and that, they get bumped 2 or 3 times, depending on playoffs that some of the high schools or the FETOs have to have. So we're bumped, and we have to change our schedule a little bit. But the users of the facilities are made up of figure skaters, minor hockey, and and Old Timers Hockey along with other prime time users. But the whole thing is that the revenue from for the operation of the arena is made of prime time plus non-prime time. And our prime time, we play now from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, 9:15 to 10:15, 10:30 to 11:30. And that's after many changes over that 43-year history of the league, where we've changed, where we've played a lot later than that in the past. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you and a little bit of the history and the referees, just as a matter of interest in our league. I've been told it's the same everywhere, but we have 3 games a night, and we pay $40 per hour for 2 referees. If they happen to do 1 game a night, they were charged $80 for 2 referees each, which is, I don't really feel that's reasonable, but that's the restrictions that we even have to work with. So anyway, that's just a little bit of information there for everybody's information.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a general comment or two about, I really take, I'm very interested in all the feedback that we're hearing here from around the horseshoe tonight. Lots of great insights, and I really appreciate the, I guess, the pliability by Mary Ellen to take this stuff under advisement, and that's the process we're in. So that's great, and I'm appreciative of members of the public that have vested interest in the use of these facilities as well, obviously. And I just wanted to say that I really applaud the efforts being made here to, I guess, make fairness, and equity and transparency kind of the capstones of this policy. Often people say, if you want to make $1 million, set up a Tim Hortons on the corner. I think I'd put a hockey rink on the corner at this rate. It's pretty enviable for people to have ice surface, especially. And of course, this is more all-encompassing than just ice. But I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the guiding principles. I think are laid out very well. I think that they encapsulate in a very sort of succinct form, the hard work that comes after that of creating these kind of value statements related to trying to be fair and to recognize. I mean, Councillor Olson points out the long-standing tradition of the Old Timers League that has enjoyed their capacity to play for many, many years and has paid a lot of money to do that along the way, to support and reinvest in facilities and so on. And the decision tree, I thought as well, is especially, I think, for the allocation, very fair. I just really, that's all I really want to say, I guess, is I just really appreciate how, youth are being prioritized, and yet there's an effort to try to maintain fairness for all. And how, on its face, those two things might seem like they sort of contradict each other, but I see a lot of nuance and a lot of effort here to try to find a balance that achieves what can be achieved to that end. And then there is the deeper issues related to things like equity and inclusion, and even as the Deputy Mayor has pointed out, bearing in mind gender balance and wanting to endorse opportunities for young women to stay involved in sports who tend to statistically fall away in these organizations as time goes by. So I just wanted to say that, and I really appreciate the hard work that's been done so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing this really get honed and sculpted and finalized. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Worship. And I just want to make a follow-up point, just so people understand where I'm coming from. I'm all for everybody sharing and that we share our facilities. I just want to make sure that, and I'll use baseball. We had the first 2 fields with lights before Rossay puts them in. So we have a splash pad. Nobody else has a splash pad. We have a free docking station out at Meenan's Cove. Nobody else has that. We man 2 beaches with lifeguards all year round. Not everybody else does that. We put in a beach for dogs. We let anybody come there. Not everybody else does that. So we've been doing a lot of things, which is great, but we just got to make sure that the Quispamsis resident is there, because and again, I'll use rinks, there's a Rosse complex being built, they're not adding a rink, but they just approved 1,100 units, right? So it's supposed to increase the population by 25%. So that's not gonna help the rink, right? So I know there's some ice time come from RNS, but you have it this year, you may not have it next year. It depends what RNS does. So we have a rink that's open 12 months. They don't. So I just want to make sure that we are doing things for the valley, and I appreciate that because I was the one kicked off the Rosse team because I didn't live in Rosse before the rink was here before. So I know what it was like before because that's why I played basketball because there was no rink. So when they found out I lived in Quispam, I got cut from the team. So, and I'm not saying we go back to those days, but we got to make sure there's equity in the communities as well. So I really love Carrie's, Councillor Luck's comment about we got to have some discussion back and forth, but I don't know how well that would go. But, and that's not a shot against anybody, but I mean, everybody's got their own different budgets and stuff. So we do put a lot of money into recreation. I think we're all proud of that. You know, we have free time at the beach or at the pool. We don't look to see who comes there, right? So, but it's just, we also got to be mindful, if we can't get Quispamsis residents into some of these events, then we have to have a discussion further down the road. Because if everything keeps growing and things aren't being built everywhere else, we just got to make sure that it works for all of us. Because we have studies that say we don't need any more, we don't need this, but that's for Quispamsis. But some of our facilities are functioning for the valley. So maybe that's a regional facility discussion. But anyways, I just want to make sure when I said I'm okay with sharing, but I just want to make sure that we are already pulling our fair share. Is how do we make sure that everybody is pulling their fair share? That was, I just didn't want to be misconstrued. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. I don't see any other lights on except for Councillor Luck.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up. I did have a request to put, I guess, just to get an update from Ms. Dana Purton-Dixon in regards to just some of the stuff that we're hearing, because this is a fabulous policy, and thank you very much for all the work that you put into it. It comes into effect in 2026, so there's issues that are kind of surmounting in 2025, and the last thing I think any of us want to see is any child in our community not access a sport that they love to play. And I know that that's kind of, one of the concerns that's kind of looming. And I'm just wondering if we could get potentially an update on kind of where, if anything, that's at in terms of some of the concerns that have come kind of up through email over the last few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Go ahead, Ms. Purton-Dixon.
Sure. Thank you, Worship. I'm assuming you're talking about the minor hockey ice time at 7:45 at the Quispamsis Memorial Arena that was switched to an adult men league. And I will share that was done to give minor hockey time at 8:30 on a Sunday morning, where there's already ice time, so it abutted that current time, and there was a men's group at that time. So when we look at the schedule, we applied the priorities that we've heard is through the allocation process, really to help guide the decision-making for this year. Although the policy is not in place, we thought we have the feedback from the community and we have to make some decisions. So let's use that as a filter, if you will, to help us with that process. So that is what we did. And the schedule has not been completed and the contracts have not been signed, and that will be happening within the next couple of weeks. So when the season kicks off in October.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess the other question was capping. Like it sounded like, and again, I'm hearing this third hand, so I'm just wondering for clarity in terms of not being able to bring on as many kids this year because they're limited.
That wouldn't be our decision. So minor hockey has the same amount of ice time this year as they did last year. We have not decreased the ice time. It's the exact same. We switched that ice time on the Sunday and the Wednesday. And actually, Councillor Olson really hit on why we did that, was because that men's group had 2 hours one night and 1 hour another, which is really hard to find referees and timekeepers for. So we put what we're looking at right now is putting those 3 ice times together to create that efficiency. So when we allocate ice time, we do it in blocks, and it's up to minor hockey to decide who plays when. So we don't decide what that, because Bantam U13, if that's, I'm not sure, I think that's what the team is, but if that's played there for the last 20 years, that's a minor hockey decision. That's not a town of Quispamsis decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Thank you, Ms. Burton-Dixon. Mr. Watson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Luck and to other members of council. Just wanted to reiterate, fully support the Director of Community Services in the allocation decisions that are being made this year, recognizing it is not implementation of the policy that we're talking about tonight. So tonight's discussion really around the allocation policy, getting that strategic level view of what council is comfortable with, where you think some adjustments need to be made. I think the conversation tonight has been really helpful to help shape the final iteration of that one. So I look forward to that coming back to council at an upcoming meeting with my thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mary Ellen, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you so much. I wanted to add one note on the capping, as I noticed that that came up there quickly, and the capping, particularly in the policy that you have in front of you. One note that we have in there is that if all ice is distributed and there are still ice time available at any point, that ice time can be redistributed, and the cap is not taken into consideration when that happens. So I just wanted to flag that although there is a cap, that's not to say that there may not be groups that actually do end up having ice time beyond that cap. It will just be a matter of ensuring that all folks have ice time at the point of capping, and then any remaining ice time would be available to folks even beyond the cap. And that also applies to reallocation of ice time as well. So when ice time is reallocated, if a group doesn't want it, the cap can be waived in that case. There are some other clauses with reallocation, but in particular, when the ice is wide open, that would be a time that, for example, if youth minor hockey wanted more time, they would be able to pick it up.
Thank you. Mr. Watson again.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to members of council, and thank you for the comment. It reminded me that we're having a two-tiered conversation here about the what and the how. And I'm really appreciative of the conversation around the what. There are some important questions that remain around the how. How do we implement this in the fair and transparent way that not only we expect, that we know our community appropriately expects of us? So some more conversation to follow, because as you can appreciate, the decision tree has 1, 2, 7, 8 steps in it. To wander your way through that on a ad hoc basis risks us losing the transparency that is exactly what we're after here. So first step is to be sure about the what, which I think we're getting close to, after which we look forward to some conversations within staff and with assistance of others to determine how best to implement in a way that will be very predictable, very transparent, not only within but beyond our walls. So thank you again for your assistance.
Thank you. Is there anything further, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Olson, that is going to... Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I'm sorry I didn't get to it the first time, and it's just a question more or less, and I haven't seen it in the policy, is as to dates that the facilities are actually available. So could ice time be available September 5th, starting September 5th? Could, exactly what are the dates, and should that be in the policy? Because if there's an extended, maybe perhaps an extended length of time that the facilities can be used, and I don't know what organizations start when, but in some of them I sort of have a vague recollection of when hockey starts and when figure skating would start, or when perhaps pickleball would start. Is there any consideration in the policy or for staff to talk about what would it look like if we expanded our hours of operation, meaning months, not the daytime hours? We start programming earlier so that it's a continuous loop all the year through. So, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I neglected to comment on the job that our Director of Community Services, Dana Burton-Dixon, has done over the years, because we've gone through a lot of changes under her direction when the high school played all their games in Rossi. And it might have had something to do with the principal that was involved with the high school at that time, but still, that was the reality. Finally, the change was made to go to the Qplex, but at the same time, we supported girls hockey, and the high school had a girls team, but girls hockey now is playing, and they're well received, and it's nice to see that too. But her and her team have stood on their heads to accommodate different groups at different times based on new trends and what have you. But thank you for your patience, and I haven't seen you hollering and screaming yet. So maybe that's to come, I don't know. But thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. And once again, thank you, Ms. Parton-Dixon. Thank you, Mary Ellen, for the work so far. And this, again, was just open for discussion this evening by council. You've taken the questions down. You're going to look at this again with your team. And we look forward to another view of this in the near future. So thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to hear everyone's feedback, and again, always happy to hear people's thoughts, and very looking forward to bring the new policy with some tweaks forward in the next council meeting. Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye.
Moving on to item 4B, procedural bylaw number 066, updated summary of findings, discussion, staff report from the clerk. So you have that. Or just wait for it. Are you?
Oh, I didn't, did you prompt me?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. I was watching that 4B.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is coming back to you guys to consider a couple items. As a result of discussions at the August 19th Committee of the Whole meeting, the suggestion for a proposed option is in the staff report. And it is, so the summer and March break schedule would remain status quo. And the timing for our regular meeting, the suggested time would be 6:30 p.m. The Committee of the Whole suggested start time is at 5:30 p.m., leaving the 5 p.m. time slot for any closed items. That's on the meeting schedule. Also, for Section 12, the committee or the electronic meeting attendance, there are some suggestions for additions to the procedural bylaw on a couple items. One, and this is in other procedural bylaws across Canada, just some procedures to strengthen the obtaining the floor, voting, and in regards to technical malfunctions when attending meetings virtually. So just giving options for those things in case there are, in case you don't have your second device for voting, providing 2 options for voting. Also, the procedure for if there is a technical malfunction on a member's end. And then the other one is in regards to the committee section. So we are suggesting a governance review of the committees. And so this would involve the CAO and the clerk to review them and provide recommendations to the nominating committee. So the two recommendations are in regards to a review of the committees that have residents on the committee, and also then any standing or ad hoc committees, just to be sure that they're still relevant, and to also determine some terms of reference for those committees. And then finally, this is the email poll section, so this is an addition, and council reviewed this section, and I think they were happy with the recommendations from the last meeting. And I think that is it for that. So I'll leave it to you to discuss.
Thank you, Ms. McGinnis. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to our clerk. Thank you for kind of capturing all the things that we discussed last meeting. One thing that I don't see here, and maybe it's because it's kind of built into some of the kind of the wording, but I just wanted to kind of, I guess, maybe suggest clarification so it doesn't get lost when you're fleshing it out, is in section 27 under committees. At our last meeting, we did talk about kind of recruitment. I know there's a bit of concern about sharing CVs, but again, exploring that and kind of looking at, you know, how do we improve that in terms of transparency, recruitment, how we do it, and all that kind of stuff. So if that could be added, that would be great.
Thank you. There's no motion on that, was there? So moving forward, Deputy Mayor, Finance Committee update. We're all set to go.
Don't we have to,
There's no vote.
there was a motion.
There is a motion,
Suggestion.
Recommendations for,
No, that's just to come back, that it'll be back at the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. You're up, Mary.
So, yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to bring everyone up to date on the meetings that the Finance Committee has been having. We've met twice, July 9th and August 13th. And these meetings were the first one was to get the draft of the related to the policy related to financial reserves, which we've already done, so that's completed. And then to talk about our next steps, planning what our assumptions we're going to use for planning for the budget 2026. We all know that the announcement by the province that they are freezing assessments this year, so it's going to play a big hand in budget deliberations this year. And we also know that we have a huge ask in front of us this year for going forward on capital and operating facilities, costs for the St. John facilities. So we just sort of wanted to get some early guidance on our budget. And so we want to look at the financial part and the process. So on the financial side, we had a discussion of what there were options put in front of us. And so the Finance Committee we've asked the CAO to make sure that the budget does not exceed 10% growth in both operating and capital. And we considered going even lower, but we felt that that might be too constringent or too strangling on demands and services. So we wanted something a little bit more or less restrictive for council to take a look at. But we also wanted to cap how far we would go with our finances, the budget. So the Finance Committee recognizes that the Hampton Road, a major project that we're looking at, so we've asked that this not be considered in the planning assumptions, that it's standalone. And in terms of the process, we recommend that more time be spent on the 5-year capital plan with council, so that council's approval of the projects is being proposed, and that they know the actual capital budget remains subject to annual approval. So we think it's important that the whole council look at the capital plan going forward prior to the budget being approved. And we also want, when it comes back with a budget, when the staff are looking at it, we also want their council to have an opportunity to know what will not be included if we go with the 10% cap. So items that they've elected to leave out of the budget because of the 10% cap. And we also want to know, we don't want to sort of get down in the weeds. We just want high level of everybody's operating and capital, not line by line by line, so that we can sort of let the staff take care of that, and we can look at the overview, high level budget. So that's where we're at with the Finance Committee. Just wanted to bring council up to date, and I'll ask our Mr. Watson if he has any more to add. That would be great.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the Deputy Mayor, the Chair of the Finance Committee, to the rest of the Finance Committee, and to Council overall. First off, a thank you to the Finance Committee for their investment of time and effort in ongoing discussions as we get ready for Budget 2026. I'm deeply appreciative of some early guidance for staff, because otherwise we risk creating a budget plan, budget submission that you feel is way off the mark, and then we end up in a very protracted effort to pare it back to something that you're more comfortable with. So this guidance certainly is helpful. I certainly recognize that the growth cap that is here is still ambitious given the assessment freeze. So I think you can entrust staff to be aiming for less than what you see here as a maximum. But recognizing that we're a growing community, and as a consequence, we do have growing demands on staff and on the operations of the organization, as well as capital investments that are required. So again, thanks. I also am appreciative of the Finance Committee's recommendation for us to spend some more time on 5-year capital, especially given that our financial reserve policy is dependent on that 5-year capital assumption. We need to make sure that you're comfortable with where that 5-year capital is taking us. So we look forward to conversations. We'll certainly come to council with ready for conversation around that 5-year capital plan as part of the early deliberations for 2026. And finally, with respect to the level of detail, in fairness, that was not a detailed conversation at the Finance Committee, although I've had isolated conversations with a couple of folks about that. I just wanted to make sure, and I know the Finance Committee shares this opinion, we just want to make sure you're comfortable with what you see at budget presentation time. My tendency would be to offer a slightly higher level view than what you have seen in the past, but not to preclude the opportunity for you to ask questions at the line level if that's what's of interest to you at the time. It's about presenting you categories of information that you can make reasonable and rational and strategic decisions around without getting down into the very, very granular detail of line items. So that's been my experience in other organizations. When I ask other municipalities where that balance lies for them, it does sound like it's slightly higher than where we have historically been here. And again, not to say that we would not welcome a conversation about a specific, but to maintain our budget presentation at a slightly higher level throughout. But again, welcome the conversation, recognizing that we're in committee tonight. This is an opportunity for us to receive further feedback, and if either Finance Committee members or other members of council have direction for us on that balance or on anything else that you've heard this evening, then certainly welcome to take that back. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. And from the FRC, we had a meeting on August the 24th, and capital costs have been legislated. They were legislated in 2023. That's going to impact us. This year, because of a surplus with Envision St. John and with Trade and Convention Center, we're not paying quite as much as what we would have been paying. However, because of the assessment freeze, and because we are expected to pay these costs, we have continually asked of the government to take capital costs out, completely out. And that has not been addressed at this point. And I've made it known that I would not be voting in favor of an FRC budget that includes capital costs for the regional facilities. And just so you know, in 2026, we will be paying almost $300,000 in capital costs this year. In 2027, it will be over $700,000. In 2028, it will be $872,000. In 2029, it goes down to $407,000. And in 2030, right now the projections are $166,000. But in that 5-year span, it's $2.4 million that we would be paying just in capital costs. I think that's unreasonable. I've made that known. So for your information, we have more than just our own budgets to look at. We are also paying for the operational costs, which we've done since 1998, of the 5 regional facilities, but we now are expected to pay towards or to help fund the capital costs for those 5 regional facilities. I've expressed my feelings towards it. I have expressed what council has asked me to bring forward. And the discussions that we've had with the provincial government have been that, first of all, we don't want the capital costs. We're told that that was legislated in 2023 by a previous government. It's incumbent upon a government to challenge the previous government decisions. And this is what I am asking, is for that to be challenged as we move forward. There's no reason why that cannot be changed immediately. So there you have that. I'm going to go to next in queue, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship, and continue the good fight on that. But it gets into the point, and we kind of talked to, this wasn't my question, but it just came in. We kind of talked with the KV group there. So if we're going to become a regional facility, then make it a regional facility, and that'll save us like $600,000 right there just on our capital and operating. Anyways, please continue that fight. I appreciate it. I just wanted to give a heads up for the Finance Committee and for the rest of council. When I hear 10%, if we do 10%, that'll be, over the last 4 years, we've increased our budget by 45.4%. That's a lot. If you go up 10%, because we have 0 assessments this year, you can't move it into the assessments. You're looking at around a 10.5 to 11.5 cent increase on the tax rate. So for those that always talks about the tax rate is the most important, your tax rate will go up about 11 cents minimum. Right now, I have it at 12.6%, 12.6 cents. I just did the math. And assuming that 1% is new, you're looking at about 11.3. And then we are bringing over 100 and some thousand we had from surplus, so you're going to be just under 11 cents. So that is a massive jump. And if we got to pay for the legislation, then if we can't take them to court, then it's probably part of, guess what, Quispamsis residents, we can't do a lot of stuff because of the government. So you call the government, because that's where a lot of our money's going right now. And instead of it coming to us, it's going there. So I just wanted to bring up that if we do go at 10%, and also if the rental rates are capped at 3%, anybody that has an apartment building is going to be eating that other 6 or 7%, whatever the difference is. And that doesn't bode well for people building in our community either. So it's just an FYI for those that only look at the tax rate. I look at the percentage, but right now I'm giving you both. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Mr. Watson, please.
Thank you, Worship, through you to Councillor Miller and to others as well. Certainly appreciate the feedback, and I'll reiterate the thinking that if we can get to a level of service that we believe reflects at least current level of service and maintain a current level of service and be under that threshold, that's where I would prefer to be. So we'll work hard to do that. I would also offer that you're right in that if we require more funds, one source of those funds is a tax increase. The other is to borrow more in order to compensate. So the mix of borrowing and tax rate increase is yet to be determined, and that would be subject to council's approval as well. So it's a big package. There are a lot of interdependencies. We're not anywhere near that point yet. But I hear you loud and clear, and our effort will be to bring back a responsible budget that is under that threshold, and that then invites a conversation around our allocation to reserves, as well as the balance between borrowing and the tax rate. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Donovan, please.
Thank you, and I do want to express my appreciation for you sticking up for us at the FRSC. I think, similar to the conversations we were having earlier, I think it's time to invite, some of our political figures to the town to actually have a conversation. And I will in no way speak badly about anybody. However, our Minister of Local Government sat in the same chair as Mr. Watson. I forgot your name for a second. But he sat in that chair and he shared the same concerns that we all had. And it's now that he's in that position to make those changes, it seems that nothing has happened. So I don't think I'm wrong in wanting an explanation, or at least a dialogue. A dialogue would be appreciative as to why those changes haven't been made, or even a discussion on, if we're not going to completely remove the capital costs, how can we offset some of those costs or figure it out to make it more meaningful and equitable, as we were speaking earlier, to the municipalities that are involved. So I really would like to have that conversation with Mr. Kennedy in these council chambers. And I think going forward, outside of this topic slightly, I believe we should sort of have some sort of invitation, whether it be once, twice, 3 times a year, for these elected officials to come to keep us up to speed. Because other than that, I mean, the mayor would have conversations with them, but I believe it's important for all of council to be able to express without having to send them an email or call them. I think it's important as a public official for them to stand in front of the public and receive that information. So those are my thoughts. Not always right, but they are thoughts nonetheless.
Thank you. On that note, Councillor Donovan, I chose to say 0 capital costs. And the reason why I did that is because we are the only region in the entire province that has to contribute towards funding capital costs of buildings that are not even in our community. So being the only ones, to me, there has to be some rationale. So I prefer to start at 0, because if I vote in favor of the budget, if capital costs are in there, it's showing compliance and acceptance, and we just move forward. So yes, I agree with you. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. When you're making these conversations with other people, I'd like you to also put the St. John Trade and Convention Center on the table for further discussion on removing that from one of the 5 regional facilities that we're supporting. An interesting note in the newspaper over the weekend, Dr. Elias is from Bundequay, is negotiating with the city, or with Hardman Brothers or Hardman Group, to take over the Trade and Convention Center. So there could be some leverage there that could be used.
And that those decisions, again, are made by the City of St. John. Deputy Mayor brought that to my attention. Actually, as I was heading into my meeting, she had texted me to say that this came out last Thursday, that the Elias Group was going to potentially take over the management of the Trade and Convention Center. And again, we had no say in that. There's nothing that we can do to, or at least there was nothing we could say. However, we can make your feelings known, and I've written that down. So, Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Elias Group is buying Market Square and Trade and Convention Center inclusive. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, I know that capital costs are the thorn in our side. However, I've said this for years, years and years and years and years, that the whole process of having legislated to even pay capital costs, pay operating costs, any of that, to me, we are the only ones in Atlantic Canada that does this, that are legislated to do that. That whole legislation, they've changed legislation already in this province by this new government. So to take that whole process away, that would make me so happy. I would be very happy. I've been, as I say, I've been here for a long time, and I've been fighting against this since it first started. Capital, absolutely get rid of it. If that works, great. Then we'll tackle the other one. But it should be gone, the whole thing. Nobody, that's what gets me, is that we're the only ones that are legislated to pay. Nobody else. Nobody else. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Appreciate that. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. A few comments. The first one is just more administrative. So the July 9th minutes, I just wanted to point out that it appears, the other minutes don't have it, but it says members absent. Okay, just because it appears that we were invited and it didn't show up, and we're not part of the Finance Committee, so I just wanted to make sure that that was corrected. You know, again, thank you for fighting the good fight. I agree with all the different comments. I mean, I think it's silly. I go back to my original comment earlier tonight about inviting, you know, our elected officials in a public forum to have these discussions, because again, having, you know, discussions in a boardroom versus having them in open sometimes changes the dialogue. You know, because I think this is something that is critical and it does affect us. However, I'm a realist, and right now our reality is we're going to have to pay them. And if that's the case, I think that, you know, we do, you know, Councillor Miller brought up some good points, you know, in terms of, you know, apartments, you know, being capped at 3%. I think we do need to make some really challenging decisions, and I've also mentioned this in the past in terms of needs versus nice to have versus need to have, and there's certain things, especially on our radar, in the last few years, like water, and then, you know, we're a municipality, so there's different things like, you know, infrastructure and roads that are kind of the basics because people drive on them every day, right or wrong. That's what we're going to hear about if we don't. And I think we felt that when we canceled our paving for that 1 year. We saw the implications of it. So I think there's certain things that we really don't have a lot of wiggle room on because we're a municipality and we have to maintain those basic services. And then there's other things that potentially we have an opportunity to plan for the future. We don't have to have everything tomorrow, even though we want it. So, I mean, I guess I would just caution all of us that 10% is a lot. And I know that our goal isn't to come in at 10%, but it is concerning because it does have, you know, a fairly significant impact on the end user, which is our taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, just a caution that when we do start cutting back, we are doing less. Even though the community is growing, there's an expectation in this community of a very high level of service. Our police and fire have been, you know, touted as being some of the best across Canada. Our police have been #1 for communities our size a number of times, and in the top 10 a number of times, top 5 rather, a number of times. So I would caution about cutting back on services or cutting back on amenities, because these are all the things that come together to make the community as it is. And I know we can't have everything we want. I agree 100% with that. We can't have everything we want when we want it. But I think we have to look very carefully if we do begin looking at what could we do without, because sometimes one thing is connected to another. You know, you can't get to an amenity without the roads being plowed, or, you know, we toot about how amenities are so beneficial to the health of all of our residents. So we need these things in order to be the community of choice that we have been over the past number of years. So it's a tough job, And certainly with costs where they are today, the finance team have their, and staff certainly have their work cut out for them. So we'll go forward with that. Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Your Worship. When we talk, or when you talk to the powers to be about the Trade and Convention Center removal from the facilities plus capital costs, remember the unconditional grant, where at one point in time we had $850,000 a year. Now it's down less than $75,000 a year. And I think the new formula is not going to be treating us any fairer. You know, it's going to be coming out soon. So, you know, I don't know why they expect us to keep paying everybody and they're not giving us our share of the taxes, of the tax funds. So just, you know, and other communities received all of our taxes and all of our unconditional grant money.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Councillor Miller?
I'm just smiling. I love what Mr. Olson just stated, because so basically that $800,000 just got transferred to the regional facilities. So I would even take Beth's comment a bit further. I agree with her 100%. She brings up that motion again. I'm voting for it. But I think the regional facilities should also be disbanded. I think it's an extra layer of government that's costing us well over $1 million a year to have another layer above our layer. So I'm okay with some of the stuff there, but it seems to have created its own beast. And I have no idea how many hours, Your Worship, you've been at meetings, and our CAO and our deputy mayor, but I'm sure it's in the hundreds of hours in the last few years. So, we seem to still be the outsiders in certain things. So I would even vote to disband the whole thing. But
And to that, Councillor Miller, the members of the regional facilities from St. Martin's to the Fundy Rural and all of our communities in between, they share the same sentiment that we are sharing here tonight. So, you know, there's nobody there that's running saying, I'm happy to be here. You know, so yes, and I take, you know, I'll certainly take back what you've requested. So moving forward. Sorry. Go
Just,
ahead.
thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify, we're not, of course, the only region that has a regional facilities arrangement. I believe we're the only region where it's mandated by legislation that we contribute, right? So, like, I sort of am a little dubious about the notion of completely eliminating it personally, not to be disagreeable, but I believe that the similar, let's say, to a degree, arrangements exist elsewhere in the province, in other regions. They're just not mandated to take part, I believe, is, if I'm not mistaken. Can you clarify that? Do you know?
Many of the, so there's 12 regions, many
Yes.
of them simply do not have facilities under their mandate.
Right.
So even if we look at the cities within the province, they do have facilities, but the trade and convention centers are not included. The theaters are not included. The arts are not included. So so they exist, but they're not mandated to pay towards them.
Yeah. And I also think that there's, it's a bit dubious that legislation, we get told that legislation has been kind of put in place and that's ironclad related to this, when not too long ago there was no legislation around capital costs. So clearly the legislation can be modified, because it was to make us, put us on the hook for even more money.
That's correct. The legislation came
So
in
why
in
can't it go the other way?
November of 2023. Yeah. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and great discussion here tonight on what's gonna going down with budgets. We all recognize that are what we're legislated to do, and thank you for carrying the torch, our voice to the table. But if we get back to the budget, you know, we're talking about capital costs, and I believe the figure quoted was 300,000 for 2026 of our budget, which is operating is 36 million and capital is, we're 7 million. So I just want to, from what I'm taking from what I'm hearing tonight, to go back to the finance committee is, number one is that we have to, everybody would like to hear more about the capital 5-year plan. So we'll put some more emphasis on that and bring that back to council. They also were looking at, the CEO often talks about, we've got to stabilize and protect the organization. So what does that look like? How big is the gap? What are we facing this year with a freeze in assessments? And so how are we going to move forward and not exceeding 10%, keeping it under the 10%? And I think Mr. Watson has heard tonight that we really want that to be very low as we can go, and maintaining a level of service, recognizing that we do have a freeze on assessment and the monies that we do have to pay out that we have no control over. The finance committee will get together again, and we'll be back. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Great job. And we will move forward now to reports are for information only. And we're looking for. Okay. We have to go back to closed session, so our audience will have to leave at that. So we have to, thank you for being here, for sticking it out. But we do have to go back into closed session, so we'll have to ask you to leave. So if I could have the closed session resolution, thank you very much. You can speak to us afterwards, yes, yes, okay. Could I have somebody do the closed session resolution once again, please? Yes, if you don't mind, thanks so much. Anybody have that? Councillor Thompson, please.
Pursuant to